You might be wondering what role coffee or tea should play when you quit smoking or vaping. Well, get comfortable, pull up your favorite drink, and let's explore caffeinated beverages and their relationships with smoking and vaping. I'll share what I've learned from helping countless people quit, including some practical strategies that might surprise you. Before we dive deeper, let me be crystal clear about something. When I say coffee or tea in this video, I'm not talking about those specialty coffee drinks where the barista dumps a shot of espresso in a blender full of cream, throws an entire piece of cheesecake in, whips it to a chocolatey slushy mess, and then tops it off with whipped cream, drizzles it with caramel, and sprinkles it with cookie crumbs. That's not coffee, folks. That's dessert trying to trick you into calling it a coffee. And while these drinks can be delicious, most of them pack hundreds of calories into a single beverage. If you're concerned about weight gain during quitting, which many people rightfully are, you'll want to be careful about how many of these you consume. My teenagers love these specialty drinks. Sometimes when I'm trying to win Dad of the Year award, which I don't win too often, I'll take my kids to the Starbucks drive-thru. I'm so scared to even order the drinks that I make them scream their orders from the back seat. And then I'm the one screaming when the bill comes. 2 drinks cost how much? It's a win-win. They get their fancy drinks, I win Dad of the Year, and I get to practice my shocked dad routine. Now let's talk about energy drinks. While many people use them like coffee, they're in a bit of a different category. Yes, they contain caffeine, but they also contain additional stimulants and are often high in sugar and artificial sweeteners. Unlike coffee and tea, which are natural products, most energy drinks are ultra-processed. I'm not dismissing them entirely though. If they are your caffeine of choice, make sure you watch the rest of this video because some of the principles that I'll share still apply, but there are a few important differences. Let's not forget about my soda drinking friends out there. Like energy drinks, sodas are processed beverages, not natural products like coffee and tea. Sugar-sweetened sodas can add additional calories and create additional challenges, so you'll want to approach them thoughtfully when quitting. When I talk about coffee or tea in this video, I'm primarily referring to the basics, your regular cup of coffee or tea, maybe with a little cream or sugar if that's your thing. I'm talking about the caffeinated versions, the kind of beverages that have been helping people start their morning for hundreds of years. Not the kind that requires a specialized vocabulary to order, that contains more calories than a dessert tray, or comes in colorful aluminum containers. You should know that as soon as this video drops, I'll probably lose several $1,000,000 in potential sponsorships from Starbucks, Monster, Red Bull, and that's really going to hurt financially. Hey kids, it looks like you're not going to college. Sorry. You need to know the following. What I'm sharing today is educational. The fact that I have 2 decades of experience helping people quit and I spend countless hours studying things like this doesn't mean that you should apply them to you or anyone else. Everything that I say in any of my videos is my opinion. It's not medical advice. So always consult with your healthcare provider about your specific situation. You know what's cool about being a quit coach for so many years? I get to see clear patterns in how people approach quitting. And there's this one common mistake that I see over and over. It's this idea that when you quit smoking or vaping, you need to eliminate everything that might be bad for you. In spirit, I sympathize with that, and in some respects I agree with some of it. But does this approach actually make sense for coffee and tea? Let me share 3 fascinating things that researchers have discovered about coffee and tea that most people don't know about. These findings are particularly relevant when you're thinking about quitting smoking or vaping. The first one is that coffee and tea actually have protective effects on your heart and blood vessels. Now you might be thinking, wait, doesn't caffeine make your heart race? Yes, for some people it can temporarily increase your heart rate. But here's what's truly surprising. When scientists follow large groups of people over many years, they've discovered that regular coffee or tea drinkers tend to have healthier cardiovascular systems. One reason for this is that these beverages contain compounds that help protect blood vessels. We're not talking about miracle cures here, but the research shows a genuine long-term benefits from them. I find this to be particularly important because many people who smoke or vape are understandably concerned about their heart health. You might be too. I'm glad you're worried about your heart, but in the grand scheme of things, drinking coffee or tea isn't the thing that's harming your heart. Smoking and probably vaping are harming your heart and are horrible for your cardiovascular system. Of course, you should always talk to your doctor about your specific situation, as some people need to limit or avoid caffeine for medical reasons. I don't know about you, but just knowing that makes me want to take a sip. Now here's where the research gets really interesting. Everyone these days seems to be talking about inflammation. You can't escape it. People are selling supplements to fight it. We're supposed to eat miracle foods to treat it and train our minds to prevent it. Well, guess what medicine has discovered about coffee and tea? It's basically nature's anti-inflammatory. They are packed with natural compounds and antioxidants that help reduce inflammation in your body. That's right, the same cup of coffee or tea that you enjoy every morning or afternoon, whenever you do, is already doing some of the work that people spend a fortune on supplements trying to achieve. I guess I'll drink to that one too. This is like our own YouTube drinking game. You guys feel free to join in. We can all drink whenever we hear something positive about coffee or tea. By the end of this video, we're going to have zero inflammation. But what scientists have discovered about lifespan might be the most compelling finding of all. Here's something that's truly eye-opening about longevity. And you know this, we have decades of evidence that shows smoking dramatically shortens people's lifespans. I suspect that eventually we'll find vaping has some similar effects. But maybe more importantly is how smoking affects your quality of life lifespan. Think about what I just said, your quality of life lifespan. We're not just talking about dying a little earlier, we're talking about having fewer healthy years that you get to enjoy and more sick years that you have to live through. This is what smokers and vapors have to look forward to, and that trade-off sucks. When researchers examine coffee and tea consumption, they find something completely different. Regular coffee and tea drinkers tend to live longer, healthier lives. They also appear to have a lower risk of several forms of cancer, which to me is super exciting. I'm going to take another sip to less cancer. My father passed away from cancer, so anything that I can do to help not get cancer, I'm all for. Now I want to be crystal clear about something important. I am not suggesting that drinking coffee or tea will somehow cancel out the effects of smoking or vaping for years. That isn't how it works. It would be nice if it did, though. What I'm saying is this: the actual health benefits of drinking coffee or tea have very few downside risks and at least should put your mind at ease about continuing to enjoy coffee or tea while you quit. Let me tell you something that might surprise you, something I've seen work over and over again with my clients. Coffee and tea can actually help combat withdrawal symptoms when you quit smoking or vaping. And I don't mean that they just might help a little. For many, they're sort of a crucial ally in their quitting journey. Let me share a story about a client that I saw recently. His name was Noah. He came to me determined to quit smoking, and he had that common mindset that we talked about earlier. He said, "I'm going to quit smoking and coffee," he announced. "I want to get totally healthy all at once." No kidding, I had been considering making a video about coffee and quitting the day before. And when he said that, I knew that I would be starting this script later that evening. I basically told Noah what I'm telling you in this video. Now, if you've watched my video about withdrawal symptoms, you know that quitting nicotine can really throw your body and brain for a loop. You might experience mood changes, you might have trouble sleeping, difficulty concentrating, and fatigue, sometimes all at once. These symptoms aren't just uncomfortable, they're major reasons why people relapse. This is where coffee or tea can become your unexpected friend. You see, when you quit nicotine, your brain chemistry undergoes significant changes. And while nothing replaces nicotine exactly, which is good because we're trying to quit nicotine, coffee or tea can help support your brain during these challenging transition periods. Think about it. That morning cup of coffee or tea isn't just giving you a little energy boost, it's helping combat fatigue when sleeping becomes difficult. It supports your mood when everything feels a bit gray, and it helps you focus when your mind is feeling a bit scattered. But there's even something more important here, and this is something I've observed in many successful quitters over and over again. That cup of coffee or tea often becomes the bright spot in your day. It's something to look forward to and something you can still enjoy while you're giving up smoking or vaping. Some of my clients even tell me they developed a deeper appreciation for them after they quit. Before we talk about what I think is the most impactful content of this video, I want you to know that I put together a quiz that I think can help a lot of you. It's our How Motivated Are You to Quit quiz. It's free. It takes 5 minutes. You'll get a custom report about your motivation. You'll find out where you are on our readiness to quit scale. And I'll even give you some helpful next steps to move forward. You can take that at alwaysbequitting.com or click the link below in the description and feel free to pause this video and check it out. When you quit nicotine, you're not just dealing with the absence of a chemical, you're dealing with a significant dopamine imbalance in your brain. Think of it like this. Nicotine has been artificially boosting your dopamine levels for so long that when you quit, your brain needs time to readjust and start producing its own levels of dopamine again. We're not talking about days here. This adjustment typically takes months. But that's only part of the story. Nicotine isn't just a dopamine releaser, it's also a powerful stimulant. So when you quit nicotine, you're actually removing two major influences from your nervous system, a dopamine booster and a stimulant. That's where coffee or tea can become particularly helpful when you're trying to quit. While they can't replace all of nicotine's dopamine effects, they can compensate for some of that missing stimulation that your brain is accustomed to getting. You might have heard people talk about brain fog when they quit. I gotta admit, I'm not a huge fan of the term brain fog, but it does describe something very real that people feel. It's that feeling where your mind just isn't as sharp as usual, like you're trying to think through a thick cloud. Feeling slightly emotionally flat or lethargic is another thing that often accompanies it. Coffee or tea can help counter these effects by increasing your alertness and focus, which makes it easier to think clearly, to concentrate, and to handle all the challenges that come with quitting. Now I want to be clear about something important. If you're thinking about quitting coffee or tea eventually, that's absolutely fine. But here's what I've learned from helping hundreds of people quit nicotine successfully. Timing matters, and more than many people realize. Give yourself at least a few months after quitting smoking or vaping before you tackle another major change like caffeine reduction. Let your brain chemistry stabilize first. To me, there's no rush. You can always work on your other health goals once you're standing on solid ground with your nicotine. And the good news, most people find that quitting caffeine is easy. My recommendation is to start by keeping your caffeine intake similar to what it was before you started quitting and see how it goes. Your morning coffee or tea ritual can be your best friend during a time of significant change, a familiar pleasure that you can count on over and over again while you're letting go of nicotine. Now here's a question I get all the time. Should I drink more coffee or tea to help with quitting? I think it's a perfectly reasonable question, but the answer involves something interesting about how our bodies process caffeine. When you're smoking or vaping, nicotine actually makes your body metabolize caffeine faster. But when you quit nicotine, the caffeine metabolism slows down. meaning caffeine stays in your system significantly longer than it did when you were using nicotine with it. Think about that for a moment. That same cup or cups of coffee might actually affect you for much longer than you're normally accustomed to. This is why I'm generally cautious about recommending that people increase their caffeine intake when quitting. While caffeine can be helpful, your usual amount might be plenty and maybe even more than enough because of this change in metabolism. For those who don't currently use caffeine or prefer decaf, I often get questions from them. I'm not saying that you need to start drinking caffeinated beverages. Caffeine can be a useful tool for a lot of people when quitting nicotine, but it's certainly not essential for your success. And for those who are using caffeine occasionally before they start quitting, I would say feel free to adjust your consumption based on how you feel and how you feel caffeine is helping you or not helping you. There's nothing like waking up after a great night's sleep, is there? You're feeling refreshed, you feel energized, you're ready to tackle any challenges that come your way. But here's the thing. When you're quitting nicotine, getting that kind of sleep can become elusive and really tricky. If you've watched my withdrawal video, which I think you should, you already know that sleep problems are incredibly common when you're quitting vaping or smoking. Let me show you some practical ways that you can manage your coffee and tea so you can actually get restorative sleep that you need and still enjoy the benefits of caffeine when you're awake. When you quit nicotine, two things often occur. First, you might have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. Then, because you're not sleeping well, you're exhausted during the day, right when you need your energy most to handle the cravings and to manage stress. It's a challenging cycle that can make quitting really harder. Now, let me share something that's transformed how many of my successful clients handle their sleep while quitting. It's really about understanding a crucial difference between how your body processes nicotine versus caffeine. If you've watched my video about cravings, you know that nicotine has a relatively short half-life of about 2 hours in your body. But caffeine's half-life is typically 6 to 8 hours. That means when you drink your coffee or tea, it stays in your system much longer than nicotine did. Because of this longer half-life, timing your caffeine intakes becomes crucial. My recommendation, based on years of working with clients, is that take whatever time you plan to go to bed and count back 10 hours. That's your caffeine cutoff time. So if you're planning to go to bed at 10 p.m., your last caffeinated drink should be no later than noon. You're going to bed at midnight, you can extend that to 2 p.m. As I get older, my sleep is easily upset. So I try to cut off all forms of caffeine by about 11 a.m. Unless I really need the effects of caffeine for some particular reason, you might just want to adopt my lunchtime rule. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, but I've been drinking coffee after dinner for years and sleeping fine. Well, here's the thing. When you're quitting nicotine, your sleep becomes more vulnerable to disruption. So what didn't bother you before might become a problem during this transition period. Think of it this way. Quality sleep is the foundation for successful quitting. It's also something that we talk about over and over when I'm working with someone. When you're well rested, you have significantly more energy to handle cravings. Your focus is better, so you can use some of the strategies that I teach, and you're going to have more emotional stability to deal with those challenges that you know are going to arise. By managing your coffee or tea intake wisely, you're giving yourself the best possible chances at successfully quitting. By the way, I think I should switch to decaf for this session. You can see it's getting a little late out there. The sun's starting to set. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Wait a minute, John. Coffee's one of my biggest triggers for smoking and vaping. How can something help me quit if it makes me want to smoke more? That's a great question, and it brings us to something about triggers that I've seen over and over when I'm helping people. Because you're right, coffee absolutely can be a trigger, but here's what's interesting: it doesn't have to be. Let me share two practical strategies that have worked remarkably well for countless number of my clients when it comes to managing coffee or tea as a trigger. If you haven't started your quit journey yet, you're actually in a perfect position to get ahead of this issue. And if you're already in the quitting process, you can still apply these approaches. They work really well. The first strategy that I recommend to my clients is what I call intentional separation. I use this term because it's not something that happens by accident. You need to do it deliberately to create a space between these two connected behaviors. Here's how it works. What you want to do is you want to start separating your coffee drinking from your nicotine use right now, before your quit date. Try not using nicotine for 30 minutes before your morning coffee, and this is crucial, for at least an hour afterward. Think of it as you're pre-training your brain to experiencing these things separately. Each time you do this, you're actively teaching your brain a new pattern where coffee exists without nicotine. The second approach works on an even deeper level. This technique can help you rewire your brain and how it responds to coffee or tea. I call it the coffee focus method. If you're a tea drinker, it's called the tea focus method, and it works surprisingly well also. It's simple, but it is effective. Here's how it works. When you're drinking your coffee and a thought about smoking or vaping pops into your head, instead of fighting that thought or getting frustrated with it, deliberately shift your attention to what you genuinely enjoy about your coffee or tea. Maybe it's the rich aroma or the comforting warmth of the cup in your hands or the complex flavors moving across your tongue. Focus intently on those specific aspects that bring you satisfaction in the moment. The key insight here isn't trying to force the nicotine thoughts away. That usually backfires. Instead, you're training your brain to focus on the authentic pleasure of coffee and tea itself. Every time a nicotine thought surfaces, gently guide your attention back to what you're enjoying about your coffee or tea experience. This practice gets even more effective with repetition, so it creates those new neural pathways that you really need in order to be effective with this. Let me give you an example. See? That's how you do it. Actually, no, you don't do it like that. You're a little more subtle and a lot more zen about it, but I think you get the idea. Remember Noah? He took my advice and he stuck with his coffee, and he used both these methods. He used the intentional separation method and the coffee focus method. When he came back 3 weeks later, he said something that stuck with me. He said, "Coffee tastes so much better now. It's like I'm actually tasting it for the first time." And I hear variations of that comment constantly from successful quitters. Once they break that automatic connection with nicotine and caffeine, they often discover that they enjoy their coffee or tea even more than they did before. The day before this recording, another client told me the following. "When I stopped vaping and just drank coffee, it honestly felt great. Coffee was a better experience than using nicotine. Drinking coffee was it's like its own little ritual. It wasn't like I was vaping where I'd mindlessly grab a vape and use it without thinking. Making coffee almost felt like a release. I had to go make the coffee, wait for it to cool down, and then drink it. Once it was done, it was done." And I think that's a great example of how this can work for you too. I've been sharing strategies that work for the majority of people, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't also address something equally as important. Even with all these strategies, some people still find that coffee is really a powerful and continuous trigger for them. If that happens to you, after you give these techniques a real chance, you've got an important decision to make. You might need to temporarily consider giving up coffee and tea until you're more stable in quitting. I don't recommend this as a first approach, especially given the dopamine and stimulant benefits of caffeine that we talked about. But for some people, it does become necessary. Of course, the alternative is to significantly strengthen your resolve during coffee time. You can think of it as your daily practice session for building stronger quit muscles, your opportunity to prove to yourself that you can face the triggers directly and overcome them. This approach is going to take more mental effort, but it can actually be incredibly empowering when it works. So it's really up to you. The most successful quitters that I've worked with over the past 2 decades are rarely the ones who try to change everything at once. They're the ones who make strategic and informed decisions about what to keep, what to change, and when to make those changes during their quit. Coffee or tea can absolutely be one of the things that is worth keeping, at least while you're quitting nicotine. Remember, this isn't about replacing one addiction with another. It's about using these beverages strategically to support you while you quit. My opinion is that if you really want to quit caffeinated coffee or tea and quit nicotine, that's fine. But you may want to quit nicotine first and then many months later, quit the coffee or tea. For everyone else, coffee, tea, and other caffeine-containing drinks can be used in ways that support your quit journey. Yes, this can include low-calorie sodas and energy drinks if those are your preferences. You should use caffeinated drinks in the quantity and frequency that work best for you based on what I discussed in this video. If you've watched my video about withdrawal symptoms, you already understand how complex quitting can be. Everyone's experience is different, and what works perfectly for you might not work well for someone else. That's why having the right guidance and support really are crucial to your success. Understanding how coffee and tea can help you quit is valuable knowledge, but it's just one piece of the quitting puzzle. To successfully overcome nicotine addiction, you need comprehensive strategies and ongoing support. You can begin this by getting your readiness to quit smoking or vaping score. Not only will you find out about your motivation, I'll tell you 6 things that you can do right now that will increase your success. You can go to alwaysbequitting.com or click the link in the description below. I'm John, and remember, always be quitting until you've quit for the last time. We're not talking about caffeine, though.